Today I'm going to show you how to record professional sounding vocals from your home studio to take them from this
I don't wanna run, wanna leave, wanna walk out again.
To this.
I don't wanna run, wanna leave, wanna walk out again.
Let's be honest, most beginner vocal recordings sound like they were recorded in a tin can. I know because I get sent them all the time. But here's the kicker, it doesn't have to be that way. You don't need a fortune or a professional home studio to start producing amazing sounding vocals right now. All you need is a little bit of skills and some know-how. And that's why I'm here. Throughout this video, I'll walk you through everything you need to know about recording professional vocals from your home studio. I'll be covering all of the parts that you see right here. Now let's get into transforming your vocal tracks from meh to mesmerizing. First things first, you'll want to make sure you have some basic equipment. If you're recording vocals, you'll absolutely want a DAW, a microphone, and an audio interface. Those three things will transfer the audio signal from the microphone through the audio interface and put it into your DAW so that you can begin working with it. I just made a video detailing some of my favorite choices for those three options that you can watch right up here. Once you have those three basic things, you're primed to start recording. But there are still a couple of things you need to get right before we actually start pressing record. The first one I want to talk about is probably the one that makes the biggest difference for amateur producers and DIY home studio musicians. That is acoustic panels. If the acoustics of your room stinks, your vocal recordings will also stink. Any extra sound reflections that are happening in your room will get picked up by your microphone and then will come through on your recording. This gets especially bad after you add processing to your vocals, such as compression. My biggest recommendation is to absorb some of those sounds by throwing up acoustic panels in your room. Acoustic panels will take those frequencies bouncing around and absorb them into their material so that you don't hear them as much on the microphone. This is one of the biggest difference makers in professional sounding recordings and amateur sounding recordings. I made a whole video on how to DIY your own acoustic panels that you can watch right up here. But if you don't have acoustic panels, you can still make do with some of the things that I know you have lying around your house. Some of the things you can do to take place of these acoustic panels are to throw some blankets up on the wall, to lean a mattress against the wall to absorb some of those frequencies, and probably the most accessible is to record your vocals inside of a closet. Part your clothes on either side, put your microphone in there, and let the fabric absorb some of those frequencies. I promise you it sounds weird, but you're going to get way more dry sounding vocals if you do it like that than if you were to just record in a noisy room. Don't overlook this step, I promise you. Another thing you'll want to consider if you're recording vocals is your microphone type. There are two main types of microphones you can choose from, a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone. For vocals specifically, I recommend condenser microphones, just like the one that you see in front of me here. Condenser microphones are really great for that high quality, crispy high end on your recordings. Dynamic microphones can be okay for something like a live recording, but if you want that crispy high end like I just mentioned, you'll want to get yourself a condenser. Here are some of my favorite microphones I recommend for vocals specifically. And I actually made a full video detailing more information that have live sound tests about each of these microphones I just mentioned. You can watch right up here. The next thing we'll talk about for your vocal home studio DIY magic is your vocal mic placement. Where you place the mic impacts how the sound is recorded. Most microphones have a cardioid pattern. That basically means that they only pick up sound in front of them and reject sound from behind them. This is extremely helpful, but that also means that you need to be singing into the front of the mic. The next thing that you'll want to know is something called the proximity effect. The proximity effect states that the closer you get to a microphone, the more low-end boominess will build up in your sound. Take a listen to this versus this. You'll notice that as I move backwards from the microphone, more room noise gets introduced to the mic, one, and two, that low end starts to go away. You can use this to your advantage depending on what kind of vocals you want to record. If you want something really soft and intimate, I recommend getting really close up to the microphone. If you want something that sounds like a vocal chant, I recommend taking a couple steps back and introducing some of that natural room noise so it sounds more like a chant. While I'm preparing the mic to sing, I'll make sure that the mic is facing my mouth or at the same level as my mouth. Then I'll put on a pop filter to stop my mouth from going any closer than I want it to. I'll make sure that I'm about a hand's length away from the microphone. That is a good distance between not too close and not too far away. In inches, that's about 4 to 8 inches. In centimeters, centimeters, I'll put that down below. Now notice I'm also using a pop filter. A pop filter is just a small mesh filter that will help get rid of some of the sibilant sounds that come from your mouth. Sibilance is any of the high s sounds that you might hear from saying the word, saying, pronunciation. Any S sounds or T or K sounds can also come through as sibilants. It's better to get rid of them in the recording than it is to go back through and fix them with processing, so I always recommend using a pop filter. Now that you've got your microphone position set up the right way and you're recording hopefully with an acoustically treated room, you're almost ready to record. But first, let's check our volume levels to make sure we're coming in at a healthy signal. If you record your vocals too hot, it will clip and it will sound like this. Whereas if you record your vocals too low, when you finally do add processing and put compression on them, you'll bring up a lot of that unwanted room noise. There is a definite sweet spot for recording your vocals, and you should make sure that you're hitting it as you record them. You can check this on your DAW by going into your input monitoring, or you can check this on some audio interfaces. My preferred decibels that you're shooting for is anywhere between -16 dBs and -6 dBs. Anything over -6 dBs may result in clipping if the singer suddenly gets super loud, and anything lower than -16 dBs will be compressed too much later and bring up too much room noise. Once you have your level set on your audio interface, we can actually start recording in our DAW. But before you do hit record, let's hop into our DAW settings to make sure everything is optimized for your vocal recording. Most DAWs have a couple of different options you'll want to dial in to make sure that your recording is as latent free as possible, or resulting in the littlest amount of latency you can. Latency is the delay between when you actually sing something and when your computer actually records it. This oftentimes is in milliseconds, but even a 40 millisecond difference between that can be the difference between something feeling like it's on time and feeling off. In Logic Pro, we can go up to settings here, audio, and open this up. And the biggest thing we'll look for, and this will happen in most DAWs, is the I/O buffer size. The lower samples we have for our I/O buffer size, you'll see the resulting latency goes down. I recommend putting this as fast as your computer can handle. If you have a bunch of different tracks going on at the same time, chances are 32 samples might be a little bit fast for your computer. However, if you just have the backing track and you're recording one vocal, 32 samples might be perfect and it will result in little latency. I'll keep it at something at 128 for now. Now, Logic has a special feature called low latency mode, where it will take the signal with all of the latency that it's calculated it has and then move it back in that amount of milliseconds. For example, right now it's calculating we have 11.8 milliseconds round trip of latency. Now that's pretty good, but if I click on this speed dial up here, or low latency mode, Logic will automatically take our vocal recording and move it back 12 milliseconds so that it fits exactly with the track. If you don't see this in Logic, go to Customize Control Bar and Display and click on low latency mode here. This is something I have all the time and I always record with it on. Just make sure while you're mixing it gets turned off, because it will turn off some plugins and it will change the way that your mix sounds. And the last thing I encourage you to do before you actually start recording is have some sort of count-in before the actual song starts. Especially if you're doing this by yourself, it can be helpful to have 4 beats, 8 beats, 16 beats of a count-in so that you can prepare yourself for actually singing the part you want to. I often set it at 4 beats, but feel free to experiment with this as you will. Optionally, you can also add a metronome or a click track as well to help you stay on beat with your flow as you're singing. Once your settings are dialed in, it's time to put on your headphones and check the mix so that you can actually hear it in your headphones. This is called monitoring. First, make sure that your actual studio monitors are muted for this. You don't want your microphone to pick up any extra signal from your speakers. You do, however, want to be able to hear your mix really clearly through your headphones. You can do this by just experimenting, playing it, making sure that you can hear it well. This often is just a knob on your audio interface that you can adjust. Another helpful thing that you can put on is called input monitoring. That means you can throw on plugins to your track and hear them through your headphones. In Logic, to put on input monitoring, you have to click on this I button on the track here. If you don't see that, right click on the track, click on track header components, and make sure input monitoring is checked there. Then once you click I on your keyboard, you can start to hear all of the effects that you put on your voice. Hearing all this extra reverb and delay can give you that added confidence that you need to sing and hit those high notes, and I recommend doing it. All of the processing I'm using on this voice currently comes from my vocal preset pack, Vocal Magic. I made this pack for FL Studio, Ableton, and Logic, and you can download 10 free vocal presets in the description below. And now that we have all the monitoring set up, we have our headphones on, our levels are all good, we're following all of the recording rules that I've mentioned so far, we are ready to hit record. But there's a couple things to think about as you're singing in your vocal performance. The most important part about a vocal performance is the actual performance of the recording itself. I know, crazy. You can follow all these other steps, but if your performance hits like a wet noodle, nobody's gonna listen to it. Here are some tips I can give about giving a proper vocal performance. 1. Memorize the lyrics before you actually sing them. Yes, you can try to read your lyric sheet here, but oftentimes it's not going to feel as passionate or as genuine as if you were to actually internalize the lyrics and think about the performance. I promise. I've had so many artists come in and try to do this, and it always works out better to memorize them. Number 2, prioritize your passion and the rhythm of your vocals. Things like pitch can be changed later, so if you hit an off note, don't worry about it. Just make sure that you're exuding enough energy into the actual vocal performance itself. And also make sure that you're staying in the pocket on rhythm, because that's harder to change later. Number 3 would be to project your voice. This one's pretty self-explanatory. And number 4, enunciate your words clearly. A mumbled phrase will always sound like a mumbled phrase no matter what kind of processing you put on it. We want our listeners to understand our lyrics, so make sure that you enunciate them correctly. And number 5, take multiple takes until you can get all of these things right. After you take multiple takes, you can put them all together as one super mega take with all of the best features of all of these. This is a process called comping, and it is very common for vocals. So with all of those in mind, I'm going to show you what a live performance actually looks and sounds like with all of the effects that I just mentioned and all of the tips I was just talking about. Let's do it.
I don't wanna run, wanna leave, wanna walk out again. 'Cause you know it kills me that we're only friends. Don't wanna say we could make it out when I know the truth. Oh, I'm still into you.
And there you go. It really is that easy to record professional sounding vocals. But that's just one take that we did. The reality is, for most professional sounding songs, they record so many different types of takes, including ad-libs, background vocals, doubles, triples, harmonies, you name it, they're probably doing it. And to show you the difference that a recording like that can make, I went ahead and recorded some more voices on the same track. Check out what this sounds like.
I don't wanna run, wanna leave, wanna walk out again. 'Cause you know it kills me that we're only friends. Don't wanna say we can make it out when I know the truth. Yeah, I'm still into you.
Do you see how some of those background vocals are filling in the empty spaces, making it sound more interesting, and then bolstering the main vocal by making it sound thicker and more energetic? That's exactly what the goal is, and it just takes a lot more extra recordings. Some of these I just went through and sang the same exact part just so I could double them and make them
I
thicker.
don't wanna run, wanna leave,
Some of these I sang an octave different.
wanna walk out again.
Some of these I just had some delays and ad-libs to fill in the space.
Out again. You know it kills me.
And then some of these I just had as harmonies.
Walk out again.
And all of these together with everything sounds great. And that brings me into the last part about professional sounding vocals. After you've done and recorded all of this, you'll want to go through and edit some of your vocals so that there's no clicks, pops, or anything like that. A good way of doing that is by adding some fades, some crossfades between your multiple takes, and so on and so forth. Now notice, if you look at this, there's a lot of empty space here in this vocal. So what I could do to get rid of it is just click here, delete it, and then add in fades on each side. This is a really common technique that I use, and it really just cleans up the entire vocal. And then once my vocal's edited like that, I'm ready to send it off to whoever, or most likely just myself, and start mixing everything. But you can get yourself started on a really easy note by downloading those 10 free vocal presets I mentioned earlier, link in the description. You can absolutely get crystal clear sounding vocals all from your desk, all using the right tools and techniques. All you have to do is follow exactly what I just gave you. If you are interested in learning how to mix your vocals and produce them so that they sound like what I just showed you, you should go check out this video I made right up here.